Happy Sunday, everyone. Scott Henderson, shooter. Of course, we're going to go over primary waves. At the end of our presentation, please do review our disclosure. One thing that we saw this week is we saw some consolidation in two different legs that actually occurred beginning of last week and then the end of the week. I would suspect that we pull back a little bit as far as towards our buy zone. I think we're going to back test that 600 level. However, it's just as likely that we push higher up towards the 150 fib. We'll see what resistance does around 646, see if we reject there. We're definitely broadening out just a little bit as far as price. So, we're getting that higher high, but then we're getting a slightly deeper higher low. And that should continue to broaden out, just like here how we broadened out and we broadened out here. And then ultimately we found our top. So I think this is peaking drive 1. So I would think that would be peaking drive 2, and then we get a decent pullback, and then we put in a peaking drive 3, then we roll and put it in our flat that comes in up around here. That's sort of my take as far as the NASDAQ. Looking at the SPY chart, very similar. However, I think there's a chance we get stuck here. Without the support of AI in the infrastructure build, the SPY is so heavy more in industrial and even the banking sector, we got some more in there than what the NASDAQ does. So there's a very strong possibility that we're already in this flat that I've potentially projected and that we stay there through the first and second quarter of 2026. However, my bias still is we're also using that same broadening. So we're still putting in the higher highs, and then we're getting broader, deeper on the higher lows. So, this last weekly candle, we closed below. So that was really the first close in the last 2 weeks besides this decent flushback. And you notice how these candles have all got similar breadth. See, that's we're being technically traded, but notice the difference between where this retracement was and this retracement and our current retracement. Notice how it got higher and tighter, right? So we should get an inside bar and roll over, or we're going to break out of here pretty quick. That's the challenging part because it's such a mixed bag. If you look at the internals, there's really not a commitment in either direction. A lot of the orders that were placed have been pulled, and really your conviction is going back into either the stocks that have flushed, like United Healthcare, which has already rolled back over, by the way, or in the deep moats that we know are going to continue to keep building and everybody can see it, like Google. All right, so let's jump into what we have as far as the punch guard stocks. Now, BRK.B, actually, it surprised me. I thought we were going to roll over and get an ABC. I thought this was going to be our A, this is our B, and I thought we'd get a C back around here. However, that candle sort of implies it's done. Right at our buy-side imbalance there, so, there's some conviction. On top of that, wick off. So we have this shelf that sort of has occurred right at about that same line. As long as that holds, probably going to come in and put new all-time highs in. The way I measure this, I'm looking at this as our primary wave 1, primary wave 2, primary wave 3. We got a real shallow 4. I'd like it to be deeper because I have more conviction chasing them. But unless the moat changes and realize BRK.B, not directly, but has a large chunk of AI. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if through the investment arm, they've funded a lot of new projects. So I can't see them not benefiting from that. So the way I'm measuring it, I think 5 pushes to the 2,618. Now, it could just go right to the 1,618 and flush, but I'm looking at quality. The breadth of wave 1, the breadth of wave 3, what does 5 typically do? It's typically about 75% of 3. So that puts us up at the 2,618. So that's my thought. So my bias is, Kirk was spot on when he sold his cash secured puts, and I'm more inclined on any pullback. I would suggest that maybe we do the same. Now, looking at IIPR, my next victim for this week. I'm actually surprised it's balanced out here. Now, there was some rumors, and I don't like to jump into the hyperboil stories or the gossip mill, but rumor has it that President Trump is working on a 50-year mortgage for residential mortgages. Now, most people are going to say, well, what's that going to do? Well, it's going to take every first-time buyer and make them all qualify. On top of that, that means I can sell my current home to Tom, Dick, or Harry, who buys it on a 50-year mortgage. So I can cash out in the cash flow, turn around, I can buy my bigger house on a 50-year mortgage, and my payments less. So what do we think is going to happen? I don't know necessarily that it's going to hit industrial properties, but I think it might get a sympathy bid. And where this floor is coming in at, we have clean divergence here. We have some confirming low way the heck back here. We got a divergent low here, got a divergent low here. So it's kind of like a 3 drive, but a distorted one because the market was giving us a lot of noise right here. First target's going to be 105 if it's going to recover. Basically, this is like a double bottom down here. So it breaks that 45, 44. I might be wrong. MACD supports the floor. RSI supports the floor, both on the weekly, the daily, and the 4-hour. So we have some confluence. All right, now what we did this week, we didn't have, those were the only 2 names that I added this week, right? What I did is I added the date that these charts were created, and I'm reviewing the existing content within primary waves every single week now, and basically keeping up to date with that. And let me just scroll down to, where there are names, just so you know, you need to go and check the names for the update. Like for example, this was back on the 25th, but I didn't update it. However, Stag, I updated because there was a significant change in the price from the upside, which when we first noted we liked it, it was about $2 lower than where we are now. So I've updated it where it's flowing into. So we'll continue to do that as it moves in our trend. I'm trying to decide if there was anything else that I updated this week. I know there was one more. I think there was one more. Yes, CTRA. And look at that push. Man, we got to move off of our low. That's for sure. But I want to make sure I update it. I'm being conservative because I don't like this. I don't like this thing right here. This flat where it's at. Wave 3, we got a flat. It's challenging. We need to get back above these highs and hold. And then we're going to have to watch euphoria, but that's one heck of a positive candle. Look what's happened when we've gotten other candles like this. Look at this. We retested it, right? Kept going back out. It continued to dump candles like that. So it likes to run, and that's a running candle. So there were definitely some buyers on this floor. Look how many times we tested this, So I've updated that chart, and that's what I believe I have for this week, folks. Great trading. Until next time.